Set? Ready to go? All right. Listen, I want to thank everybody for being here. I especially want to thank people who are leading the process of the topic we're talking about today. What we're talking about today is the urgent need to fix a broken bail system in the state of Texas that literally is killing our fellow Texans. The leaders of this in the Texas Senate and Texas House are Senator Joan Huffman and Representative Smithy, and they both will be talking to you here shortly. I also want to thank some of the survivors who are with us, one of whom is sitting up at the table with me, and she will be sharing her story, and that's Sophia Strother-Lewis. I want to thank Michael Bullock with the Austin Police Association, Chuck DeVore here with TPPF, who will be talking and sharing a little bit more about his perspective. Also, very importantly, this is an issue where there are victims and survivors, those who have been directly attacked by criminals. At the same time, this is a challenge that's being confronted by law enforcement across the state of Texas. Law enforcement who may make arrests of some of these dangerous criminals only to see them let right back out onto the street. Law enforcement officers who themselves are charged with securing and safeguarding those neighborhoods that these crazy leftist judges who release these criminals are endangering those law enforcement officers by putting these people back on the street. That's one reason why we are joined today by law enforcement officials from across the entire state of Texas. They include the representatives from the Combined Law Enforcement Association of Texas, Texas Municipal Police Association, the Texas Department of Public Safety, the Sheriff's Association of Texas, the Texas Police Chiefs Association, the Austin Police Association, the San Antonio Police Officers Association, the Deputy Sheriff's Association of Bexar County, as well as the Sheriff of Brazoria County, the Sheriff of Chambers County, the Sheriff of Tarrant County, and Bexar County Commissioner Grant Moody. Most importantly, I want to thank the survivors for being here. There's nothing more kind of incomprehensible, shocking, frustrating, tear-jerking than to hear the stories of survivors. The only thing worse than that is what the survivors actually had to go through. And it's important that survivors be involved in this because it's their stories that are going to change the minds of the people whose votes we need to be able to get this passed. And so, in addition to thanking Sophia and the other survivors, just know the difference that you're making. Know how grateful we are that you're part of this process today, part of the process that will ensure that we get legislation across the finish line that's going to make Texas a safer place by tying the hands of judges who are releasing deadly, dangerous criminals out onto the streets just to harm somebody else. We're here today to tackle a bipartisan issue. It's a common sense issue. Fixing the deadly and broken bail system that lets dangerous criminals right back out onto our streets. We're joined, as I mentioned, by families who lost a loved one or had a loved one assaulted by a criminal released on easy bail or no bail. Activist judges are protecting dangerous criminals instead of the innocent Texans that those criminals harm. There are many horror stories across the state, many horror stories right here in Travis County. One of them involves the death of Xavier Jones Sr. Jones was robbed and killed by a group of career criminals. 3 of the 6 felons charged with his murder were out on 16 active bonds, one as low as just $1,000. Despite their lengthy rap sheets and known gang affiliations, Travis County judges kept giving these repeat felons extra chances. with that extra chance, they shot and killed Xavier Jones Sr. in front of his girlfriend and her child. Jones was slaughtered in State Representative Tallarico's district. To prevent similar murders, Representative Tallarico needs to step up and join with Representative Smithy in the Texas House of Representatives to support a constitutional amendment that fixes the broken bail system that we have. Know this. The story or two that I told and you're going to hear today, they're not isolated incidents. Hundreds of Texans have been murdered by violent criminals who had been previously arrested and then released on easy bail. That's exactly why I made bail reform an emergency item this session. Judges simply have far too easy discretion to set easy bail for violent criminals. Activist judges let repeat offenders back into neighborhoods with little or no bail. Neighborhoods that our law enforcement officers are charged with patrolling. And let's be clear about this. This is not a right or left issue. This is not and should not be a Republican or a Democrat issue. This is a public safety issue, plain and simple. To fix the broken bail system, we have to amend the Constitution. Let me explain that very quickly. Texas is different than some other states. In Texas, bail is set out in the Constitution. What that means is to change the bail system, we can't just pass a law to fix it. We have to pass a constitutional amendment to fix it. That requires 2/3 of the members of both the Texas House and Texas Senate to get it done. And to fix the broken bail system, we need to amend the Constitution to do several things. One is to work on people's phones that are going off in the middle of a press conference. One, judges must automatically deny bail for violent crimes like murder, rape, and human trafficking unless there is clear and convincing evidence that the defendant will appear in court and not endanger the community. What this does, it changes the law to shift the burden for repeat violent criminals to prove that they are not a danger to the community. Second, judges who release violent criminals on easy bail must explain their decision to the public in writing so that they can be accountable for the deadly, dangerous decision that they make. Third, prosecutors must be given the right to appeal a judge's questionable bond so that when one of these leftist easy judges lets a dangerous criminal back out on the streets, it can be appealed immediately and get a court of appeals to say the trial court was wrong, that person must be apprehended and put right back behind bars. Too many judges let dangerous criminals back out on bail only to see them commit another murder or assault. State representatives must fix that by passing a constitutional amendment. Lawmakers must choose, support the safety of the citizens they represent or the criminals who kill them. Next is going to be Senator Joan Huffman.
Thank you, Governor, and thank you for your powerful words speaking to victims and their rights and just the horrors that they've suffered. You know, we've been working on this for several years. Many of you in the press have been following this, and you know that. And we've worked very hard with these Democrats that the governor has talked about to work on us, try to negotiate. But I will say this, we are done negotiating. The governor has laid out perfectly what the bill is going to do. This package of bills has real solutions in them that will make a difference. We heard from some family members today. Mr. Davis spoke of his daughter that was murdered. Jim and Connie Branham spoke of their son. the bills actually would have helped their situations. No one could predict exactly what would have happened, but there were real solutions that there would have been a very real probability that those individuals would not have been out and been in a position where they could have killed their loved ones. These Democrats who continue to not be willing to look at the facts and the realization that this is happening in their districts, their constituents are being raped, murdered, threatened, terrorized, that they should have a moral obligation to take this vote and to pass this on so the Texas voters can make a decision. We're all convinced that the Texas voters will overwhelmingly approve this resolution, and all these other reforms that are in place will make a real difference. Law enforcement has said so. They've spoke eloquently as well about the repeat offenders they see, the people that they have to continue to rearrest, the lack of cooperation that they are seeing with witnesses, because the witnesses on the street are afraid that if they speak out against someone, they're going to be out on bail in just a few weeks or a few days or a few hours even, literally a few hours. I've heard police tell me that it's very frustrating to them to arrest someone. They go back out to the scene and here comes the perpetrator again. It literally happens that way, and this is just, it's nonsense. It's time for there to be a change, and Texans deserve a change. And so I implore the Texas House Democrats to vote for these common sense measures. Thank you. Thank you, Governor.
And now the House sponsor, Representative Smithy.
Thank you, Governor, and thank you, Senator Huffman. You know, the first time when I first got involved in this effort, I met with the governor. The governor said the best thing that we can do is pass legislation that substantially fixes the problem. He said the worst thing we can do is pass legislation and then just say we fixed the problem. And I'll tell you, Governor Abbott has been the negotiator that's kept this thing straight and has kept us in a strong position. And we're working, you know, trying to work out a deal. But if we, it's not going to be a bad deal. It'll be a good deal. If we don't make a deal, then we're gonna go to battle, and we're ready to do that as well. I've been visiting with Sophia, and I can tell you she may have the title victim under her name, but she's not really a victim right now. She's a warrior. She's gone to war in the political system, not to help herself, but to prevent what happened to her and so many other families from happening again. And I can promise you, if this legislation, if we pass good, strong legislation, it will save human lives. And not just human lives, but innocent human lives. Children, mamas, daddies, and brothers and sisters. It will. And so, you know, Senator Huffman has pretty much given a piece of her life to this legislation over the years. Not to that extent, but I can tell you it's the last thing I think about before I go to sleep at night and the first thing I think about when I wake up. But I will say this, that when you work so hard on a bill, you think of it as being your bill. And I know, you know, but what I've come to realize is this isn't Senator Huffman's bill. It's not my bill. It's not the governor's bill. This bill belongs to the victims and the families of these people. And so when we are successful, and we will be successful, the victory goes to them.
And let's hear from one of them right now with Sophia. If you would, please share your story.
Thank you again, Governor Abbott, Senator and Representative, so much for your connotation of saying we're going to go to battle. It's really time out for chit-chat at this point. Yes. Because for us, this is our lives. This is not something to play with politics. This is something that we have to deal with every day. On January 1st, 2001, this man, Augustine Daffy Akulo, who is now a convicted sexual assault felon and also a federally convicted felon for money laundering, conspiracy, and fraud, tortured and raped me. I decided to go through the justice journey, which was just as horrifying as actually being raped and tortured and kidnapped. But I put myself out there primarily because I wanted to be a voice. I didn't want to allow for him to potentially do it to someone else, which, come to find out, by me coming forward, I potentially helped put a stop to 8 other women that were in queue. So going through that justice process, he had 2 opportunities to get bond. He got one initially after he was picked up but he was put into the federal government's possession, and then they let him out. Didn't tell me because I wasn't the federal government's victim. I was the state's victim. But after that, he was given bond even through the state originally. And right after that, and it can be looked up, he went to where I reside and work at and blew up about 2 to 3 of my vans. At that time, I had a contract with Amazon as a delivery service partner. So I was an entrepreneur that wanted to have a family business. Even in the midst of going through what I was going through, I wanted to be able to give back to a state that I love. Fast forward to November of 2023 when my trial took place, and I was there, and the only person in there that was of my family was my oldest son, who is also the product of me being trafficked as a juvenile here in Texas. He was the only one there in the audience, and after going through the trial with 10 men and 2 women, he was found guilty of sexual assault on November 16th of 2023. The prosecutor, Ryan Bonds, asked for him to be remanded into custody, primarily because he was already a repeat felon through the federal government, found guilty in 2019 with Homeland Security. And then now, through the state of Texas, he's a convicted sexual assault felon. His attorney said, well, Your Honor, my client has a baby due in 2 weeks. Can he be let out on bond? And the judge said, oh, okay, congratulations. We're going to go ahead and let you out on bond. You promised to come back, right? And he let him out on $75,000 bond, which basically means that he assessed to me as a survivor of someone that was able to prove her case of being raped, I was only worth $750. After that, he never showed back to the sentencing trial on December 14th of 2023. And all of 2024, when my name started showing up on the dark web because he was able to see my social security number, my date of birth, my vehicle license plate, my name and my address. So, of course, this convicted felon of money laundering, conspiracy, and fraud now has all of my personal information. I then endure bank fraud and identity theft. I had to make one of the hardest decisions of my adult life outside of filing against him. In June of 2024, I had to voluntarily terminate my multi-million-dollar contract with Amazon, close my company where I employed at least 100 people, had been working my butt off for the last 5 years with a payroll of almost $2 million, and I say that proudly, being able to invest into this economy and go from being a multi-millionaire to $500,000 in debt instantaneously. A month later, I very seriously thought about ending my life. So we talk about people that lose their lives to perpetrators that are let out on bail, but they don't talk about those of us that want to die to suicide because we feel like life is no longer worth it and our value is nothing. The judge allowed me to continue to go forward as if my life means nothing. And so even now, as he has been on the run for over 70 weeks, I have unfortunately not been able to hear from ICE because he was also an illegal immigrant from Nigeria that was here. I have not been able to hear from Homeland Security or from the Fugitive Task Force, Lone Star Fugitive Task Force. But I did hear from Governor Abbott. And when I got the call to be able to tell my story and give a voice to what so many of us, whether it's the parents and loved ones of those that have lost their lives, whether it's sexual assault survivors like myself, human trafficking survivors, even domestic violence survivors, have been waiting for our opportunity to say we are worth more than the bail. For some of them, I've heard $100. So I'm worth 10? That person was worth 10 cents if you give $1 bail? Like, it doesn't make sense, and it needs to stop. And so I am here along with several other of the survivors, of the family members of those that have lost their lives, that we wage war, Representative. It's not about chit-chat. And I, again, declare for any representative, any senator that is not on board with this, come to my face and tell me what value you see in me. Thank you again, Governor Abbott.
Thank you. To be clear, if and when this passes, the criminal who assaulted her, tormented her, would have remained behind bars, would not have been able to continue to torment her. And that's exactly one of the things we're trying to achieve here. And who in the Texas House of Representatives can be in favor of letting her rapist, her tormentor, back onto the street to continue to re-violate her day after day after day. It's insanity. This is a bill, a constitutional amendment that just restores sanity to the legal process. Law enforcement is intricately involved in this process. And speaking for law enforcement today is Michael Bullock with the Austin Police Association that sees a whole lot of this in Austin, Texas.
Yes, sir. Along with everybody else, thank you, Governor Abbott, Senator Huffman, and Representative Smithy, and Sophia for speaking up on this, because it is a critical issue that law enforcement does deal with on a daily basis. And in particular, in recent years, we have seen that unfortunately, time and time again, how lenient our judges and oftentimes prosecutors are towards violent criminals, and it does nothing but destroy public safety in Texas rather than uphold it, and emboldens those who break the law. And that not only endangers the public, but it also endangers officers as well. Sitting here hearing story after story, it's very clear, especially here in Austin, how prevalent this issue is. How officers have gone to calls involving someone who was the victim of family violence and calling yet again because the person who made them a victim has come back. And when officers show up, it then becomes a deadly encounter with law enforcement, and they attempt to shoot law enforcement as well. We have other individuals who get arrested for aggravated robbery, detectives that spend hours working on these cases trying to bring justice to these families, for then a low bond to be issued and individuals to be let back out with little to no accountability or oversight, and then they continue to go on the exact same criminal rampage that they had before with little to no intervention. We also have instances that happen right outside the building where we sit right now in the heart of the capital city, where a murder occurred, and then we find out that the individual that APD arrested for that homicide was out on a bond, and he had previously been arrested for aggravated assault. We have other instances where there are random acts of violence that occur and individuals may be arrested, but then little value is assigned to those lives. And all that is going on right now is the re-victimization of people who have already lost the most, with the prioritization of people who have broken the law. And it's become very clear that apathetic district attorneys and judges who seem to have no sense of public safety are endangering our cities. And they are destroying the sense of law and order that Texas and our citizens hold very dearly, and that law enforcement works very hard to uphold. So common sense bail reform is desperately needed to keep violent offenders away from our communities, so that we can try to restore that sense of safety that far too many people have lost here. And it is becoming ever more difficult for law enforcement to continue to do their job, because prosecutors and judges are creating their own agenda that is contrary to that of the safety of the citizens of Texas. So I again thank y'all very much for working on this issue and for working with law enforcement and victims to hopefully move this forward, as it is not a political issue. It should not be one. It is one that is about safety of the people that we're all charged with taking care of.
In the Capitol, we call this, among other things, a policy issue. We're trying to change the policy in the state of Texas. And we are making this presentation today at the headquarters of a policy organization, the Texas Public Policy Foundation. And with TPPF is Chuck DeVore.
Thank you. It's a true honor to host Texas Governor Greg Abbott to the Texas Public Policy Foundation, along with so many advocates and leaders, law enforcement leaders, and survivors and courageous families. Your presence speaks to the urgency and importance of this issue before us, fixing a broken bail system. As you've heard with the testimony today from the governor, from our elected representatives, and from the survivors, clearly our bail process is broken in Texas. At the Texas Public Policy Foundation, through our Right on Crime initiative, we spent years to improve public policy in Texas, to make things not only more effective, to save taxpayer funds where they can be saved, but also to improve public safety. This effort has been going on for some 15 years now, but despite our efforts and the efforts of our allies in the legislature, one area of Texas public safety continues to fail the people of the state of Texas, and that is our broken bail system, which too often releases dangerous offenders back onto the streets despite the serious public safety risk they pose. Earlier, I think before the press came in, we heard from one of the Department of Public Safety leaders about how our clearance rates have been declining, and one of our experts at TPPF, Nikki Presley, has been doing some groundbreaking research on clearance rates and why they have declined over the last 50 years. And one of the major reasons is the fear of witnesses that there'll be retribution from people who are too quickly let out on bail and may come back and seek revenge, or certainly at very least keep the witnesses silent. Today, dangerous offenders, individuals charged with crimes such as murder and sexual assault, are walking our streets because they can afford to post bail, as we heard from many here today. We believe in a bail system based on risk, not riches. That means that nonviolent offenders should most oftentimes be granted release, but high-risk people who pose a clear threat need to be detained in jail while awaiting their due process rights. The stories of those with us today who have been harmed by violent crime remind us that this is not merely a policy debate. This is a life and death issue. Violent offenders should never be offered multiple bonds, let alone be walking the streets free. That's why we stood proudly behind the Damon Allen Act, a good first step that banned personal recognizance bonds for violent and sexual offenses and gave magistrates better tools to assess risk. But that's not enough. The Texas Constitution still ties judges' hands, requiring judges to set bail for heinous crimes, no matter the dangerous threat posed by the defendant. This has to change. Governor Abbott and many of the people in this room have called for a constitutional amendment to give judges the ability to deny bail to the most violent offenders, to prevent the next tragedy before it happens. And Texans agree. A poll conducted on behalf of the Texas Public Policy Foundation and Right on Crime found that 81% of voters, including over 70% of Democrats, support a constitutional amendment on bail. So today, we stand committed to this mission. TPPF and Right on Crime want to thank Governor Abbott for his leadership. We stand with the families whose voices must be heard. And we urge lawmakers to do the right thing. Let Texans vote on this critical amendment in November. Let's fix the system. Let's make Texas safer. Don't play politics with public safety. Let's put victims and public safety first where they belong.
Thank you very much. I believe that there will very likely be a vote on this issue in the Texas House in the coming weeks. Every member of the Texas House has one question to answer. Are they going to vote to protect the citizens they represent or the criminals who kill them? We'll take a few questions.
So you're going to need approximately 12 Democrats and all Republicans in the Texas House to get the constitutional amendment passed. What progress are you making in talking with these Democrats, and how are they responding to the additional provisions you're requesting now in addition to what already passed in the Senate?
So there is progress, but not sufficient progress being made with discussions. I will tell you this, and that is the amended version that has the elements I laid out today as well as a few more elements. I don't know how many Democrats have actually seen that yet. So they have not yet been put to the test. They will be put to the test, though, here in a week or two, where all we're seeking to do is to ensure that criminals with a proven deadly, dangerous history, such as murder, assault, rape, etc., whether or not they are going to vote to say there's a tougher standard to let them out of jail, or are they going to say a judge can do whatever they want to do and release these deadly, dangerous criminals back out on the streets? That should be a very easy decision for them.
Governor Abbott, if we're not able to get this over the finish line, will you call a special session on this issue?
We'll make decisions like that as they arise. My expectation is that no Democrat, no Republican wants to have on their record that they supported dangerous criminals over the safety of their own constituents.
Governor, you mentioned tying the hands of judges. You had previously supported amendments that just gave judges more discretion. Can you just talk a little bit about what went into that decision to seek the stricter standards this session?
Well, to be clear, you're talking about two extremely different types of crimes. There have been movements for years in Texas where we wanted to ensure that people who commit crimes that are not violent crimes, that don't harm anybody else, would have a pathway to course correct their lives and go on to lead a productive life. It had nothing to do with murderers, rapists, human traffickers, and other violent crimes. What we're talking about now is what has happened across the state of Texas, where people who are dangerous have committed crimes and judges let them go with low or easy bail, only to commit more crimes. Across the state, there's close to 200 people who have been murdered by someone who had previously been arrested for a murder and let out on easy bail only to murder again. That's insanity, and it has to stop.
Two more questions.
Question for Representative Smithy. When are we going to see this out of committee and onto the House?
Well, we have, really, I think we've got to get it out this week of committee. And once we get it out of committee, hopefully it will be on the floor within a week or so.
Last question. Any considerations for the local jails? If we're going to have people being held definitely with no bond, it's going to be costly for counties.
Let me tell you something. I'll be happy. I'll be the first in line in the state legislature to say we need to write the check to keep murderers and rapists behind bars. Count me in.